Hi everyone, welcome to Luis Cisneros YouTube channel, and today's polymer clay tutorial is about how to make an elf in a gift box. I know it has been a long time, but finally we have the last episode of the holiday, and this is a continuation of the gift box and the elf's face. So this is entire piece. I'm sorry for not uploading as soon as I could, but I had like the holidays and then family time, and then it took me a little bit long to make it, but finally it is here. So let's start. So this is a material that we're gonna need to create our figurine. We're gonna need the proportional chart. You can download these in my website just to know the proportions of our figurine. And we're gonna need tools, just sculpting tools like the pliers, the needle tool, dotting tools, the latex tools, and just brush. And we're gonna need also an armature, especially since we cut it in the last video. And if you don't know how to make an armature, you can watch my video how to make an armature. We're gonna need wire. This wire you can buy it in the art supplies stores. We use it for the box. We're gonna need clay, and this is an example of some of the colors that we will use, but you can use different colors for the clothes. And we're gonna need also the head, and if you don't have it, you can watch the video on how to make an elf's face. And we're gonna require a gift box that we made in a previous video. If you haven't watched this video and make these two items, just please watch those videos and make these items since they will be required. Also, we need baking paper and the conditioning machine. We're gonna condition white clay using the proportional chart. We create the trunk and we incorporate it into our armature, covering the entire wire of the trunk area. And for our fingers, we're gonna create a shape of a pear that is gonna be curved, but on the top it's gonna be a little bit of like flat. So it's gonna be like more like creating the chest, and then the bottom again is gonna have that rounded area that is gonna be the tummy. And just to remember, our character is bending over, so in that way we have that in mind. With the needle tool, we create a line where the bottom is, and then we add a little bit of clay just to highlight the chest. So we create a square and we add it to the chest area. With the needle tool, we incorporate it and we draw the lines with our chest and the part of the neck and the bones on the top. Forget also on the sides where actually it's bending, we have some ruffles that are and some rolls that our character has. So we use the needle tool to create those rolls, and also with the dotting tool we create the holes where our legs are going to be. We put inside our screen wires, and that way we save some clay, and we seat our character inside the box. So that way we put our legs in the position that we want them to be. Then we condition more clay and we create two cylinders to make our legs. We convert it to the proportional chart just to know how much clay we're gonna use. After creating the cylinder, we're gonna shape it into the leg, creating the calves and also the thighs. So we create the two legs, then we're gonna start incorporating into our armature. So we push the wire inside of our leg before we just shape the top of the leg in end like a V end. So that way the top it is thinner and then it goes bigger to the thighs, and that way it matches the V of the body. So then we push the wire inside our leg. Try to not push it so hard so you don't affect the shape of the leg, but if not, you can reshape with your fingers. Then with the needle tool, we're gonna draw the tailor lines that the clothes has all the way to the one on the top of the side of the body all the way to the leg, and also we're gonna do it inside the leg too. Beside those lines, you're gonna create stitching marks just on the left, on the right of the line. So in that way you can see the stitching marks and the tailor marks. Do it on each side, on the top of the trunk and on both sides in the leg. Then when you finish, you can bake the entire piece. We're gonna start creating the pattern on the cloth, and for this we're gonna create stripes. We need red clay for this, but you can use any color. We create a cylinder, we flatten it on baking paper, and then we use a card holder just to make it even. With a ruler, we cut one side and we measure to make it at the same size all the way to the length. And then we cut again and we have our stripe. Then we start covering the entire body with the stripes, and we start from the back, and the way that I put it is just from the line that I draw, the tailor line, I start putting there the stripe, and then I go all the way around to the other side, and then I go to the front and I put another stripe in the front, and that's how I go all the way around the body. Then after that, I'm gonna draw the tailor line and the stitching marks on the sides, and then I'm gonna draw the stitching marks all the way to the front, on the top of the stripe and on the bottom of the stripe. Then I start all over again, putting at the back another line. I make sure the white space is even, and I start from one side on tailor line, and then I go all the way around to the other side, and then I cut it. And then I go to the front and I do the same. I start with one side and I go all the way around to the other side. I cut it again. And then after I unite them, I start drawing the tailor lines and the stitching marks. Just because our character is bending, it's gonna get to a point that the rolls are gonna start coming out. So, and they're gonna go inside of the rolls, so, or on the top of each other, because it's bending. So to create that effect, what are we gonna do? We're gonna cut the extra stripe clay that we have that I touched the tummy, so that way the effect is like going in. And for the next stripe is gonna go to the top, so in that way we create those ruffles that the cloth creates when we bend. What we're gonna do, we are gonna follow the body shape that we created, and as you can see, I'm gonna cut again the extra piece of clay that in a way that stripe is going inside, so it's affected by the tummy, so that creates the effect. Then with the needle tool, I just clean up and I make it straight. Then what I do, I just on the side, with the needle tool and the fingers, I smooth and I put the tailor marks and the stitching marks. Then when you finish, you can bake. So then we're gonna start with the legs, and as you can see, I finished the other leg, the stripes in the other leg, and so I'm gonna show you how to do it with the second leg. So after we incorporate it and smooth it and reshape it, don't forget the tailor marks and the stitching marks on the side and the inside of the leg. Then you can bake this leg. As I did in the trunk, we just have the red clay ready, that is the stripe. I cut it in one side and I put it in, start inside the leg where the tailor mark it is, and I go all the way around and I incorporate it to the other end. Don't forget about the tailor marks and follow the white ones, and then the stitching marks too, just to put them on each side. So you're gonna put it as the same as the white. You're gonna put it on the left and on the right, so it's gonna have 2 lines of stitching marks, and in the middle of the 2 stitching lines is gonna have the tailor mark. When you put the second stripe, what you need to be careful it is the white space is equally in all the way around the leg. So that's what you need to be really careful. So when you go all the way to the end, just smooth it and make the stitching marks and the tailor marks. So this is a tricky part since we're encounter the knee, and this is the third stripe that goes where the knee goes, and since we are bending the leg, and what is going to happen is the stripe are getting closer, whereas the bending by it is getting further when it's the opposite side. So this is a tricky part, and what we need to do is we start from the inside, so we put it closer to the other stripe and we put it a little bit further just on the top. And with the help of the needle tool, we reach the area that our fingers cannot reach, and also we can make the marks. Then from here it's gonna be so easy, so we just continue doing the same and just keep putting all the stripes. That is gonna be easier and easier since we don't have any more folding or any area that is affecting the rest of the stripes. So we just do exactly the same. We put them and we put also the tailor lines and the stitching marks. When we cover to the one at the end, then we can go and bake the entire figurine. We're gonna start with the arms, and we create cylinders that we compare with the proportional chart so we know what size we need. We create 2 identical ones and then we incorporate into our armature. To shape it into the arm, what I do is where our elbow goes, that is actually doing the angle, I make it thinner, and then I stick a little bit of clay where the elbow is going to be, and where our hand starts, I make it thinner and I make it thicker going to the elbow, and I again thinner. The same on the top of the arm where the shoulder is, I make it thicker and then I make it thinner, so in that way I can show the bunny muscle. So I do exactly the same with the other arm, and I incorporate it really carefully into the armature, and I try to smooth as much as I can with my fingers. Then I will use the needle tool just to thin the part where the elbow goes, and to thick the other parts where the muscles are going to be. I shape the elbow with my fingers, and also I shape the muscles, and I flat at the end of the arm where the hand is going to start, and I reshape also the muscle on the top. I add a little bit of clay on the top of the 2 where the shoulders are going to be, so I a little piece of clay, and I incorporate it with the needle tool and my fingers to make it smoother. Then I put the head on the top between the shoulders just to know where it's going to be and see if I leave enough space, and that's correct. And before putting the stripes on the arms, don't forget to draw the line, the tailor line and the stitching marks. Then we can put the stripes and do also the tailor lines and the stitching marks on the stripes. And this is how we do it. So after you draw the tailor line and the stitching marks on the white arm, what are we gonna do? We're gonna follow the same as we did with the legs. We create the stripe and we go all the way around, starting with the tailor line and then cut it and then make it even, flatten, tailor lines, stitching marks. After you finish all the stitching marks and the tailor marks on all the sides, then you can bake the entire figurine. We're gonna start making the short, and for this I create a dark green. So we use for the hat light green. To create a darker green, I use a little bit of blue. So I mix it together and then I condition it. We're gonna start tailoring our short, and for this we're gonna start creating a bikini. So we create first the front part, and for this I create, as you can see, a V. I measure with a pencil heart and I cut the extra clay that I don't need. Then after I measure it and I make sure that it fits, I reshape and then I put it on the top. And don't worry to cover a little bit of the last strap because that's the point, and the short is covering that. Then after you secure it with the needle tool, we're gonna create the part of the back. So we create another V and then we tailor it and making sure that it covers all the way in the back and on the bottom too. Make sure that you use your needle tool just to reach those areas that your fingers cannot. Then we're gonna create the butt, and we use extra clay just to create that silhouette, and we incorporate it on each side. So we're creating the cheeks of the butt. So we put one on the side. Just make sure that you measure before incorporate it. Just when you're sure that you have the exact amount, then you incorporate it and use your fingers just to smooth the surface and the needle tool to create that butt line. To create the legs, what we're gonna do is just create two cylinders that are exactly the same size. Measure against your figurine, and when you have the length, then you're gonna flatten it, and we're gonna use the baking paper just to flatten it more, make it even with the card holder, and then we're gonna cut it and measure it so they have both exactly the same size. Here's when you can customize and make it as thick as you want. We're gonna do the same as the stripes. We're gonna start from one side and you're gonna only incorporate where the top part it is. So only incorporate it into the greens. In that way it looks loose and it looks more realistic. So with the needle tool, you're smooth and you go all the way around to incorporate it. Again, do not touch the end of the short, just the inside on the top where the bikini and the butt cheek is. And we do exactly the same in the other leg. To add more detail, we create the line, the tail line in the middle of the short, and then on each side stitching marks. So, and then just make sure that you do it also at the end of the short where the legs are, just all the way around in each leg. We also do it on the side, tailor lines, and then on each side of the tailor line, stitching marks. We do it also on the top of the short and on the front in the middle. We create a elastic waistband, so we create a cylinder and then we create those marks that the elastic waistband has of the short. Now we're gonna create our boots, and for this we cut the extra wire that we have. We create two identical cones that we flat on the base to create the feet effect, and then we also, with the dotting tool, we create the hole where we're gonna put it on, and we curve the points so that way we create the effect, the elf effect. Then with two identical pieces of clay, we create a trapezoid that is going to be the top of our shoe. We measure it, making sure that it's the right size. We use a little bit of Sculpting glue and we put the shoe on, and we use our trapezoid just upside down to incorporate it into the bottom of the shoe. With the needle tool, you start to smooth that surface. Just try to incorporate it pretty careful with your needle tool without leaving any marks, and try to smooth it as much as possible. To make the sole, we create a lighter brown and then we recreate the shape of the shoe. We just flatten it, and with the needle tool we create the heel. After that we try to smooth a little bit at the base so we can stick it, and try to make the two at the same time, so in that way they look the same. With the needle tool we create the marks, and then we create stitching marks on the shoe. After you put the stitching marks all the way, you can create your own designs, you can customize it, and then you can bake it. We're gonna create the hands, and for this we need the same clay that we use for the face. We create a triangle with a round base. Then we cut that round base for the fingers. We use that base and we put marks, making these marks from the biggest to the smallest. We do the same in the two pieces and then we cut them. To create the fingers, we use the biggest piece for the thumb. So we incorporate into the hand just on this side. To create the pointy finger, we're gonna use the third biggest piece of clay. Then for the middle finger, we're gonna use the second biggest piece of clay. And then for the ring finger, we're gonna use the fourth biggest piece of clay. And then for the little finger, we're gonna use the little piece of clay. We use the needle tool just to create the fingers really carefully and to incorporate it into the hand. Just to remember, the ends of the fingers are bigger than the ones that they get into the palm. Use your needle tool to draw the fingernails and also the lines that we have where the joints are. Then we're gonna do the same as we did with the other hand. Just make sure that you make a right hand and a left hand. So the difference is where the thumbs are going to be. Use your own hands as reference. Then you can incorporate them and try to give some movement to the fingers so it looks more realistic. Then you can bake it. To stick the head, we're gonna add a little bit of glue to the body and to the neck, and in the middle a little bit of clay. But before sticking the head, we're gonna create the suspenders, so we're gonna do exactly the same as we did with the stripes, just except these are gonna be green. We create two tiny stripes. Measure them against the body and we cut them and we position. We measure the one that it goes to the back, and we position, and we measure the two. We use a little bit of brown and the same as the sole, and we create the triangle. We just stick on the back all of them, and then we put them together, and with the needle tool we create the stitching marks. And then with a little bit of brown we create at the bottom with the rounded tool, and with the needle tool we create the holes at the bottom. We put in place the suspenders for the front, but I recommend to make stitching marks on the front and on the back, and then we can put it on place. We also create the bottoms, and remember the front suspenders are going to be in an arc, a little bit loose, since our character is bending. This creates the illusion. After you finish, you can bake. Then we can stick our head, and we're going to create triangles with the red clay just to create the detail of the neck. We have 4 identical triangles, so we're going to put one on the front using our needle tool to create some texture. Then we're going to create another one for the side, another one for the back, and another one for the other side. Just use your needle tool to push it and really secure that neck. So I added the triangle, and I try to tailor it as much as I can, but sometimes it is not enough, the clay that I put on and the triangle, so I can add up, and with the needle tool I can make it to hide the suspenders, since they don't go all the way around, and I can add more piece of clay, red clay, if I need. I use the needle tool just to give it a more texture, and that's how I make this piece. This actually adds a really classic look to the figurine, and also adds more movement into the clothes. The latex tool just to help me, especially the edges, to make it straight, but with the needle tool I really press down, so that way I secure even more the neck. I add more clay if I need it, and I smooth it with the needle tool. We're gonna create the tissue paper for our gift box, and we use the conditioning machine setup number 1. We create a rectangle, we pass it through the machine. Then we cut it 3.5 inches by 3 inches. Then we lay it out on the top of the box, and really careful, we create the ruffles, and we put it inside, sticking outside of the box. It's creating like a pillow for our character where it's gonna sit. Then we put our character into place. And the last detail is the pom-pom that it goes on the tip of the hat. After we bake the entire piece, we're gonna add some gloss glaze into the eyes. And this is how a little elf looks like when it's finished. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments or suggestions, post them below the video. And if you would like to support this channel, don't forget to subscribe.